We'd like to call to order the City of Roswell Mayor and Council regular meeting for Monday, February 14th, 2022. And we begin tonight with an invocation and a moment of silence. Our guest is the Father Remington Sloan, the rector of St. David's Episcopal Church. Father Sloan.
Mayor, council members, and citizens of Roswell, thank you for the opportunity to be with you. Please join me in prayer. O God of infinite wisdom, boundless compassion, and limitless creativity, we give you thanks this evening for our beloved community of Roswell, for its people and places, its institutions of industry and commerce, learning and recreation, service and governance, and for these servants gathered here in council. We pray that as this council gathers, they would, by your grace, continue as good stewards of our common resources and servants of this community, for the welfare of all your children, the protection of the vulnerable, and the prosperity of all who call Roswell home. We pray that they might continue to utilize the gifts of wisdom, compassion, and creativity, which have their source in you and are perfected in your service. We pray that you would direct them with your gracious favor and further them with your continual help, that their works begun, continued, and ended in you might be pleasing in your sight. This we ask in your most holy and loving name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Father Sloan. At this time, I would like to call Alan Christian of the Roswell Rotary to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, everyone, for showing up tonight, getting involved and getting active and getting informed. And please join me in saying a pledge allegiance to the greatest country. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Alan. At this time, we go to the mayor's report, and I would like to read a proclamation on Sergeant Kent Sharp as the esteemed veteran of Roswell. Sergeant Sharp, will you meet me at the podium? Proclamation of the Office of the Mayor. Sergeant Kent Hawkeye Sharp, esteemed veteran of Roswell. Whereas Kent Sharp was inducted into the United States Army in 1969 as a private E1. In 1970, Private First Class Sharp reported to the 9th Infantry Division in Tan Tru, Vietnam, 3rd Corps Republic of Vietnam, where he was assigned to the 2nd of the 60th Infantry, 9th Infantry Division Rifle Platoon operating in the Mekong Delta. And whereas after several search and destroy combat missions, he was promoted to Specialist E4 and assigned to the Army School for Advanced Marksmanship in Cu Chi, where he trained to serve in small units carrying out stealth combat missions. And whereas the United States Army bestowed the following medals of decorations: Combat Infantryman Badge, Army Commendation Medal with 2 oak leaf clusters and V device, Army Good Conduct Medal, and the Vietnam Service Medal with 3 bronze service stars. And whereas in 1975, Sergeant Sharp was honorably discharged by the United States Army after a 4-year inactive reserve obligation and has continued to serve his fellow veterans by co-founding Vet Buds in 2011, along with Steve Haynes, United States Air Force pilot, and Bill Williams, United States Army Vietnam veteran. The mission statement of Vet Buds is to support and provide assistance to other veterans in the state of Georgia, And whereas we remember the strength of our community and nation is in our collective bond to a spirit of service, and that there is no higher calling than those who have served in the United States Armed Forces. And whereas we are proud that the city of Roswell commemorates this great service of yours and is honored to begin the tradition of honoring the veterans in our community with you. Now, therefore, I, Kurt Wilson, Mayor of the City of Roswell, do hereby name Sergeant Kent Sharp, an esteemed veteran of Roswell, on February 14th, 2022, and call upon all our citizens to recognize his outstanding service to his country and to our community. Thank you, Sharp, Kent Sharp. Ann, would you like to come up here? Ann? I think Sergeant Sharp would like to say a few words.
I'm not much of a speaker, so I had to write it down. Mayor Wilson, City Council members, thank you for this award tonight and for recognizing local veterans in 2022, granting them Esteemed Veteran of Roswell status. I said no to receiving this recognition, but Ann encouraged me to change my mind. While I don't believe I'm worthy of this praise, I gladly accept the award and hereby dedicate it to all Vietnam veterans that returned home from that unpopular conflict to jeers, calls of baby killer, druggie, warmonger, and in some cases, physical attacks. To my fellow Vietnam veterans, I say, welcome home. Your sacrifices have not gone unnoticed. I'm grateful to Roswell City staff for taking excellent care of the Faces of War Memorial here at City Hall. It's clean and in fine working order. And by the way, I love that memorial. I think it's irony that I stand here in front of you tonight, honored for my military service, considering in the 1960s I did everything I could to avoid the draft. Today, I'm proud to have served our country, and I'm a better person for having given a couple short years. Perhaps it was fate that our paths are crossing here on Valentine's Day, 14th February 2022. In closing, I want to mention Vet Buds, a veteran support group that Steve Haynes, Bill Williams, and I founded in 2011. For more than a decade, Vet Buds has provided support and relief to worthy veterans in North Georgia. We are a 100% volunteer organization that holds meetings in North Fulton, West Cobb, and Cherokee County. Our group receives no government funding, and our members receive no compensation for their work. We're always in need of serviceable used vehicles, housing, clothing and food items, and of course, cash donations. Please call me if you know a veteran we could help. Perhaps because they think it makes them look weak, but veterans are notoriously reluctant to help. Also, let us know if you want to support our efforts in any way. Our next meeting is Wednesday at Uptown Cafe in Johns Creek at 0730 hours. We welcome all honorably discharged veterans. Thank you, Mayor Wilson and Roswell City Council members and city staff for making Roswell, Georgia, the best place in America to live.
Next item on the mayor's report is item number 2, approval of a resolution for changes to the City of Roswell Charter to be sent to the General Assembly of the State of Georgia. I ask the council to remove section 5.14, vacancies, the section on vacancies, to remove it from further consideration. Do I have a motion?
Mayor, so a motion just specifically to remove that part from it, or a motion for everything? What's the request?
Councilmember Palermo, forgive me, on my poor putting this out. This particular motion is to remove section 5.140 from further consideration.
Excellent. In that case, I motion to remove that section from any consideration.
I second.
There is a motion and a second to remove section 5.140. All in favor, raise your hand. It is unanimous. Section 5.14 is removed from further consideration on the charter resolution up before the council. Item 2. The second motion I'd like to ask for is that the approval of the resolution for changes to the City of Roswell Charter be not considered at all this evening and be moved to committee for tomorrow. Do I have a motion to move the rest of the resolution to committee for tomorrow evening for consideration? Councilman Hills.
I move to table this to tomorrow night's, oh my gosh, committee meeting, right?
Thank you, Councilman Hills. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Councilman Mortland, I have a second.
Clarifying question?
Thank you, Councilmember Palermo. Yes, sir, clarifying question.
So I certainly support that this should be a discussion occurring at committee and having a longer discussion. I have, for one, I would like the opportunity for this mayor and council to still discuss tonight, and certainly the opportunity for anyone in the public to weigh in, whether that be tonight, but also for the opportunity that tomorrow at committee, if there's interest in public comment as well, in addition to mayor and council comment, that we open that up for tomorrow as well.
Councilmember Palermo, thank you for that clarification. If the council moves forward with the removal of, the moving of this resolution to tomorrow night for consideration in committee, the next step in the mayor's report will ask for public comment on the entire subject matter, both the removal of section 5.14 and the consideration of the resolution moving to the committee tomorrow evening, and any other thoughts. Yes, sir. Councilman Van Strom.
Just as a point of clarification, what would then ensue as we go forward?
The next step, Councilman Van Strom, is I would ask for public comment on both the removal of section 5.140, and I would also ask for public comment on the consideration of moving the resolution for consideration to committee tomorrow evening.
Once it goes to committee, then what are the next steps?
The next step is tomorrow evening, City Council will have it as a committee item, and we'll have full debate on it, and we'll consider the item with the exception of section 5.140. Any other questions from council? I believe I have a motion and a second to move this resolution to committee tomorrow evening. All in favor, raise your hands. It's unanimous. This section, item number 2 on the mayor's report, the approval of resolution for changes to the City of Roswell Charter to be sent to the General Assembly of the State of Georgia, with the exception of section 5.14 around vacancies, will be moved to committee for tomorrow evening. The next step is on both items just discussed. I am going to do something a little unconventional. I am going to ask for public comment on both the items that were just brought up. And I know that not everybody is always comfortable walking up to the podium. So I will be down here as well, so I will come to you if you prefer to speak from your chair. So that being in mind, and the tradition that we are as public servants, which is what we are, when public comment is made, I will sit in front of you, or I will come to you with the microphone when you make public comment to help free up your freedom to make your comments easily and to us. So that being said, by the way, public comments, I would request, obviously, Roswell residents, I hope you please, when you make a public comment, name your address and your name, where you're from, and I ask you to keep your public comments to 5 minutes or less. With that being said, bear with me. Comments? public comments. I'm sure there are a lot of folks that came this evening for public comment. I know it's Valentine's Day. It's 7:15, so please feel free to come up and make public comments. Good evening.
Where do you want?
Would you like the microphone? You want? I know you're comfortable. You speak all the time, so you're in your wheelhouse.
My name is Mary Robichaud. I reside at 2900 Roxburgh Drive in Roswell. I also have the privilege of serving as one of the state representatives for Roswell, for House District 48. I came today because I actually am very pleased to hear that this is being tabled and that you're going to be seeking public comment. Many of you may or may not know what's going on right now down at our Capitol is redistricting. We've already completed the congressional and, of course, the state House and Senate seats, but we are now into the local redistricting, which kind of gets more to our county commissioners, school boards, and in some of our cities, some of the districts. So I applaud also and would recommend to you, having now served there and listening to all of these things, that public comment as much opportunity for members of the public to give you comment, especially when you're changing a city charter. As you know, this bill will come up to us at the state House, well, the entire state. We both go through the House and the Senate. It will come as a local bill. It involves the entire delegation. You, in Roswell, you actually have 6 representatives, 4 representatives and 2 senators who cover Roswell. And then it goes to the entire Fulton County delegation, which is a 27-member delegation for the county of Roswell. Then it would go on to what we would call the local calendar for our vote, which these are typically voted in a group kind of thing. So I'm very happy to hear that you're going to take public comment as much as possible. And I, as other members of the delegation, are ready and willing to help get that public comment to you in any way, shape, or form that I can, to also help explain the process as it will occur down at the state. Thank you.
Representative Robichaud. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Tina Sloan, longtime resident of Roswell, live at 820 Saddle Hill Road. First off, finding out about this through Facebook was very upsetting. Not all of your constituents are on Facebook. My husband's one of them. I had to send this to him in an email. He was not pleased. But my comment is, how many years are in a mayor's term? 4. How many terms can a Roswell mayor serve? Is it 2? Yeah. Okay. That's not what it says online. But anyway, what I'm asking is, what if the person who succeeds you is not someone you think is a good guy? Someone who's totally self-serving and in it to line their own pockets? Do you want them to have the power you're taking in that office? We have checks and balances in Roswell. The system is there for a reason. Roswell is bigger than any one mayor and any one city council. It's existed since 1854 and will be here long after all of you are gone, long after all of us are gone. I and many of your constituents that I've talked to today who did not give up dinner plans with their loved ones to come down here to talk about something they found on Facebook do not want the city's focus and initiatives to swing wildly about every time we have a change in the election process. We get a new mayor, oh, we're gonna do roads. We get a new mayor, oh, we're gonna do parks. We need to have a plan. The plan needs to be initiated. Y'all need to help the employees implement an overall plan for the city of Roswell and not take it upon yourselves to do something within your 4-year term that's just something that you have as an idea. We don't want to cede control to any single person or single mayor, and we really do not want you to move forward with these changes to our charter, especially not after a month and a half in a public service office when you've only been serving public service for a month and a half. Thank you.
Ms. Sloan?
Yes.
Is it okay? May I ask you a question? What is the biggest challenge for you? What do you find most upsetting about what you have learned from Facebook and emails and all this? What has got you most concerned about this?
That a major change to the charter of Roswell was going to take place a month and a half into your office, and it has not been fully communicated to people. And quite frankly, I had to dig through some things today to find out. I saw your paragraph, but I found something that somebody else had blogged, and then I had to dig through to find out exactly what was being presented. And I don't think that's right. It doesn't seem fair, open, and honest, and I want fair, open, and honest, and I don't want one mayor or one council to have that control. Why do we need to change that charter? Fix what you came to fix. Do what you said you would do, and don't try and change our city. Thank you.
Hello. Hi. I think most of y'all know me by now. My name is Sarah Beeson. I am a local resident. I'm a homeowner. I also run a local family business that's been based here for over 2 decades. Like many in this room, found out about this online through the agenda being updated on Friday evening. A resident actually posted about it on Facebook, letting folks know that there were going to be changes to the charter, and thankfully I was friends with him on Facebook, and I have a very connected group of folks, and I was tipped off about it. And I think what's most frustrating about that was the fact that this was never previously mentioned in any council meeting, any work session, and any of the proper channels that each and every one of you know is the way that you would take to do any of these major changes to the governing document that it shows how we operate as a city. This document governs how all of Roswell functions. Most problematic, I think, is the way that this was introduced very quietly. I think the mea culpa statement that was given out today on behalf of the mayor was broadcast more widely than the fact that this was even going to happen in the first place. And I think the way that most people found out in this room was through the mea culpa statement, not through the actual agenda itself. The way other cities do this, for example, Sandy Springs went through the same process. It's a long process. I think Representative Robichaud made a very good point. If y'all are trying to make crossover day, which is in a couple of weeks, the way this should be done, it ain't gonna happen. This should be something that citizens, residents are given proper notification for. This comes out of a work session. It comes out in the light of day, and people are given proper notification to be able to come in and weigh in about how their city should run. It shouldn't be a document that originates with just a handful of people. I noticed in the statement today, and I do appreciate the fact that the vacancies language was removed, but there is a lot of language that remains that changes the mayor's powers, it changes the mayor pro tem powers, or at least terms, the way that the city administrator functions, and changes to a city manager. I've got 3 minutes left. I can't even outline the changes, and that should tell you something, that there's way too much changing about the charter for me to summarize in those minutes, that it should not be coming out just in this session. I realize that Councilman Palermo said today that this was just to introduce the conversation for us to get this started. If that's the case, then why is it there's other things being introduced later today that have the blank, this is signed blank date on blank month by the mayor, whereas today was already predated, signed by the mayor on the 14th of February. That makes no sense. It showed that it was about to be signed today. It was also on the agenda item that it was going to be approved. So with that, I think that was incredibly problematic on all levels, from the issue of transparency, especially considering the fact that I look in front of each and every one of the council members in front of this room and the mayor himself, and know that the cornerstone of each and every one of your campaigns was transparency. And if you're looking for transparency, y'all, this ain't it. The way that we should know as citizens is this should come out in council meetings, this should come out in work sessions, and we should be given proper notice so that we can weigh in. And I think at this point we should look at how do we fix this. My suggestion to mayor and council is to be able to create a charter commission that should be able to be appointed. My suggestion would be through the delegation, which would be through the Georgia General Assembly, with some input from the council members and the mayor, in order to make sure that we're not just appointing figureheads that are talking points on behalf of y'all, because we need to make sure that we keep this fair. The delegation themselves could then appoint people. We do have a bipartisan 50-50 in terms of partisan delegation that can help. Y'all can also pick a handful of those to make sure that it's fair and balanced. And I believe that this is the way that other people have done it in the past, but we should also look at Sandy Springs. I believe Johns Creek also just went through a charter commission. But the fact that we're talking about this after the fact, that we just had to table this after public pressure, after a mea culpa statement, after a councilman had to be like, y'all, this isn't what happened, I'm reliving Yellow Ball all over again, and I kind of feel like that's why we just had these elections, was to not have this PTSD. So with that, I'm begging each and every one of you, as this goes into committee tomorrow, to consider a very fair and balanced way to which council members and mayor himself are not leading these discussions, to where y'all aren't directing this document, and that it should be a citizen-led commission who is really leading the creation of the charter and the changes themselves, so that it is a fair and balanced, and so that the players aren't refereeing their own games. So with that, thank you for your consideration, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sarah. Got two coming up.
Good evening. My name is Lisa Stamey, and I reside at 1160 Martin Ridge Road. So I am coming to you today because the mayor and 3 of the council members, you guys were just elected. You've only been in office for a month and a half. You're changing the charter within a month and a half. Transparency would have been that it would have been in your campaign candidacy platform that this is what you wanted. You cannot deny that you didn't have to talk to every resident to get a vote. Everyone should have known that you wanted to go from a weak mayoral system to a strong mayoral system, and they should have voted in November based on what you wanted to do in your 100 days. So the fact that you come in and then decide, oh wait, I don't like the power that I have, and then you decide to change your vote, and you're gonna slip through, in the dead of night, just change our charter, it just says that you didn't care what any of us thought in November when we voted for you. So when you take this into consideration, remember that you had the opportunity, 3 of you plus the mayor, you had the opportunity to speak to each and every one of us and have an opinion and speak and put it out there for all of us to know, and you didn't do it. So don't mea culpa today that somebody found out. You had the opportunity, and you haven't done your jobs. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Orleans?
Strange being here. I tried to stay away from here the last 4 years. But I'm glad, I'm sorry, Jerry Orleans, 5700 Fairmont Trace. I'm glad you're postponing this because definitely, and it's been said already, transparency, Mr. Palermo has mentioned that multiple times over the years. You guys mentioned it in the campaign. And all of a sudden, over the weekend, not even by deadlines of agenda for Thursdays, but over the weekend, it comes up as an item tonight to be approved and passed. And I'm not even sure there would have originally been discussion on it. So anyway, I'm just trying to understand your definition of transparency going forward so that we're all on the same page. Secondly, I'm very glad to hear that you are postponing it with some rethinking on this. I don't know that just a committee meeting tomorrow will solve it. As you've heard tonight, there's a lot of people that want some additional information on the whole topic, understand better about exactly, why you think the certain powers should be changed, not just you're changing them, but why. And then as far as the appointment that you were originally going to continue on with, I think we all want to have a vote for whoever our council members are going to be. We've had that in the past. If you think it's an additional cost, in the past we've always worked it into, like this year, for example, if maybe this was to replace Councilman Zapata, and I don't know what the situation is with him, but we've got a primary coming up in the spring. We've got a November election coming up. The election can be covered in another way without costing additional expenses to the city. So I think you need to really step back, think about this, take time, not just tomorrow, get some input. It was suggested maybe a commission, maybe you do that. I'm not trying to suggest anything other than the fact you take your time, step back, and point made, and I don't mean this detrimental at all, some of you have been very new into the city and what's going on, so maybe you should see how the whole charter works before you start changing it, or understand the way it works before you start changing it. And I'm not trying to go yes, no, or in between. It's just some thoughts on how it's approached, how it's presented, and how you come to a decision in the end. And it also, as mentioned by Mary, will take some time through the state legislators, which is running out. So you may even have to work on it for an additional year. Anyway, just some of my thoughts, and thank you guys for serving. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilman Orleans. Thank you, sir. Would anybody like me to bring the microphone to them where they're at? Any further public thoughts or comments? Yes, sir. Mr. Yao.
Jason Yowell, Old Oak Trace. I want to thank you for being responsive. I heard another speaker say this was akin to Yellow Ball. There's a big difference between this and Yellow Ball. Yellow Ball, the mayor had a huge backlash, and she not only tabled the item, but she refused to allow discussion. And I'm glad that discussion was welcomed, despite the fact that the item was tabled. I think people have overreacted. You can certainly do better, but it is heartening to see that you have you heard the groundswell and you responded, and shows to me that the system is working. Maybe not the way everybody would like it to in their idealized mind of how things should work. God knows it doesn't work that way for me very often. But you guys are learning, you're adjusting, and you know, there's been a lot of comment about ascribing all kinds of nefarious motives. I don't think your motives were nefarious. You want to affect change, you want to affect it quickly, and there's a lot of change that needs to happen. So I understand that you saw these changes in the charter as a means to achieve those, and that, I think, is at least good intent. It's not malintent. And I'm sorry that so many of our fellow citizens seem to think that it is. It isn't. Not mine. Of course, this is just my opinion. And again, I want to thank you for addressing it directly and openly. And thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yao. Yes, ma'am. Ms. Russell.
Janet Russell. Next month, 49 years in our lovely city. As you know, I only speak the truth because it makes it easier to have a good memory when you don't speak anything but the truth, because the truth never changes. First of all, I think it was a really bad idea, really stupid. I don't know who thought about it, but you forgot to think about the whole reason why we give people like Mr. Sharp a veteran, because he defends our Constitution, even if it was in stupid Vietnam where I was too. However, I do want to congratulate you because you've gotten a nice crowd here tonight. The biggest crowd, usually there's 4 of us here. And this is the most sacred and holiest of nights, Valentine's dinner night. So I want to thank you for just yanking people away from the Church of the Red Chocolate Box and getting them here tonight, because for some it's really special. And maybe they'll come back for other things, like when they try to move the Faces of War Memorial or the Oxbow Project. All of those things happened under previous administrations, and I was like St. John in the desert crying out in the wilderness because nobody else showed up. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Russell. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Erin Brumley. I live on Martin Ridge Road in Martin's Landing, and I just want to tell you how my weekend was. A couple of years ago, was it like 3 years ago, my husband and I were in Mexico, enjoying really nice vacation. I think it was Cancun. This was pre-pandemic, and all of a sudden I saw a message on Facebook about Big Creek. Thank you. Okay, a Big Creek. He's a biker, and we immediately jumped into action. And so there I was at the beach, trying to drink a margarita while I was just trying to engage everybody to make sure that we save those trees in that park. And so last Friday, as I was getting ready to make preparations for the Super Bowl and anything, once again, in the afternoon, I see a message and then started getting engaged about, hey, what's going on? I've been at the last few meetings, you've seen me. Didn't hear anything about this. So just the way that it was presented, not only that we found it because of the change in the agenda, but also we didn't have these specific changes on it. And to this day, I don't think they have been published. I know the way that I saw what was different between them was like a citizen went through both documents and started looking page by page, which bless her heart, because I am not a lawyer, and so I would have been like completely, my eyes would have been like, like this. It's just disappointing that we haven't learned from previous administrations that we need to have our ducks in order before we do this. That once again this morning, not only we missed the Super Bowl preparations, but I also had to tell them, hey, I'm going there for Valentine's Day. It's just we really encourage you to just make sure that you see what is needed to be done before we start giving it to the public. Check with your lawyers, check what is the process. Obviously, our change in the charter means that you're going to have to go to state legislature, make sure you also have, given a heads up to them, make sure that everything is correct so that the process goes really smoothly. I know that they have just found out, the whole delegation, that this is going on right in the middle of session, with such short time for crossover day. Let's be fair to them, too. They also have other priorities that I've been thinking since the beginning. And like the other citizen mentioned, this was also that was very surprising because it was not mentioned in any of your campaigns. And so, usually we know, for example, that you were very much into fixing up the Oxbow Road project, which is great, but none of us had any idea that this was also going to be part of your first 100-day plan. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Brumley. Yes, ma'am. Ms. Barnes.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Claire Barnes, live at 19 Revival Street. Okay, we congratulate y'all. I don't think you had nefarious intentions when you started this. Roswell's got some problems. Roswell's got some serious problems. This is how we ended up with Oxbow. This is how we've got all these consultation projects on shelves someplace that nobody's executing anything. And I think maybe that the method or the behind it was good. It wasn't a nefarious or a mean-spirited. It wasn't trying to be non-transparent. And maybe if we back up a few steps and regroup and bring it to the public and do things, that maybe we can accomplish these goals. But I don't think anybody up there, mayor or council, had any ill intentions of trying to hide anything. I think you're trying to fix what we've got a lot of broken things in Roswell. We've got things that need to be implemented. We've got things that need to be done. And we're not getting anything done. Nobody got anything done in the past. And I think y'all are sincerely trying to get something done. And people just need to be patient. Don't go and just accusing people and want to hang everybody when, let's back up and be civil and get some things done. We've got potential to get things done. We've got to get things done in Roswell. The other communities are going up and leaving us. We've got all these studies we've paid for, like the river thing that, that you want to implement. There's a lot of things that need to be done. And if we don't change things, we're going to keep getting what we've got. So, hopefully we can get things changed and people will start, back up and, maybe, implement it a different way. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Barnes.
Margie Cooper from Roswell for a long time, 2040 Wilson Ridge Court. I served 3 terms on the Recreation Commission many years ago, so about 15 years on the Recreation Commission. And I felt like the Recreation Commission was a citizen working group. We had staff that worked closely with Councilman Orleans and others. And as citizen servants appointed by the mayor and council, we took the job of developing the park system in Roswell very seriously because we knew that land wasn't appearing to be more plentiful, and whatever decisions we took were permanent, or at least costly and would last for a very, very, very long time. So I'm just here to remind all of us that the city does have a tradition of process being as important as product. And if it takes a long time to get a good process to ensure a good product, then that's the time we should take, because when you change the charter, it's probably going to last for a very long time. And hopefully, all of the good thinking at the front of that takes place with enough time for everyone to be certain that the decision that you're taking is a good one. And the last thing I'll say about developing parks, we always had public input. It was built into the DNA, so the committee would work with professionals to get a proposal for the development of a new parkland, and that was our work. But then the work was turned over for citizen input. So there were always several sessions where the plans would be displayed on easels, and we could take more feedback in from the public, and oftentimes good thoughts came from that process too, before we started the final step in turning it over to the professionals who were going to develop the parks. And I think that we can all, I hope, agree that the park system is one of the crown jewels in the city. And I think maybe if we borrow a little bit of the process mentality of that long-standing group of volunteers and professionals, maybe we'll make some good progress. So thank you, good luck, we're rooting for you, and it's a big city with lots of good ideas. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Good evening, Laura Jones, Kings Mill Court. This is my first council meeting, and I just,
Welcome.
Thank you. Hopefully I never come back. No, that's not true. But I did feel compelled to come for both this resolution and another one that's coming up. But since I won't be able to come back tomorrow, I wanted to state that I was unhappy with these changes. I don't know if there was any nefariousness, but I think there was at least some incompetence, because there's probably a reason, but that wasn't a reason you wanted these changes, but that was never expressed. And for me, as a professional, I need to know what we're fixing, why we're fixing it, and then the solution. Why do we need to do this? And maybe in the committee meetings then, what are all of the options for fixing that particular problem? And so that was my problem with it. There's probably something you're addressing, but I don't know what it is. And so if this is your only solution, then that really bothered me. So, thank you.
Thank you. That's very insightful. Mr. Charo, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. It's good to see you all. I'm here this evening, naturally based, particularly based upon that proposed resolution. And I encourage, like Councilmember Emeritus Orleans and good points by Ms. Beeson here, to take a step back. Encourage you all to form a commission or charter commission or committee and follow a process that encourages consensus. Discuss, one, the why for the change. Two, furnish a business case. Three, benchmarking of our sister cities and comparisons. Four, display the current state and a proposed state, and do that gap analysis to explain, again, the reasons why. Being a change agent is not easy. Been doing that in the corporate world for a long, long time. Change is never easy, it's not perfect, but organizational change management, the culture of City Hall and the people need to be put up top, at the top of our organizational structure. I thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Mr. DeCharlo. Thank you. Would anybody else like to make public comment? Please feel free. This is an excellent time to share your concerns. If anybody changes your mind, let me know. I understand. It's not easy to walk up here and talk. And one of the things that I think is always illuminating is obviously I did not want to make a business case after the fact, because obviously when things like, when these kind of situations occur, they occur because someone like me, and it was me, that pushed this agenda. So I want to have clarity that the person at fault around this issue is me. The council is not to blame. It is me. I pushed this agenda, and I'll share with you just some insight. This may not make it any better, and you're exactly right. Didn't run on this issue, wasn't even a really high priority in my mind. After getting elected and then being in office and learning a great deal of history about our city and beginning to look at it from a standpoint of opportunity, began some discussions with council, who are our elected representatives, who I believe when you're talking to council, you are talking to the people. I don't think I think that's an important point, that not every issue is always a issue that's always full-blown, and the reason I mention that is there's no process for the charter conversation. The delegation, the state of Georgia delegation, has complete autonomy and authority to make the decision. And so now, the interesting pieces most relevant recently are the creation of the new city of Milton and of Sandy Springs, where there was a great deal of focus and intentionality on the charter. But that being said, going through it, there were a couple of problems that became paramount in my mind, and I think there were some excellent points made about not making a good business case and not coming to you as my fellow residents to inform you of it and of the urgency of it. So that is completely on me. I will tell you what informed my thinking. What became clear to me from behind the scenes as a newly elected mayor was that there was a real challenge and a reason why we had been ineffective in many ways in getting things done over the years, because there was not clear delineation, and there's a lot of history where the city administrator, and by the way, Mr. Knighton is an excellent man and does an excellent job, and we just barely have gotten to know each other, and we have a great working relationship. But the reality today is the charter presents itself is that if Mr. Knighton as the city administrator and myself as the mayor, and this has happened in the past, has happened recently, if we decide, hey, I've got more authority than you, the charter does not resolve that. And that showed up as a real problem in the last administration, because neither party, vis-a-vis the charter, had authority over the other. I'm a believer at the end of the day that the organizational chart is very simple. It is the people on top, and then they represent their representatives through the mayor and city council as their voice. And then the org chart goes from there. And so it's my perspective, and this is what I share with the council, was that there was an immediate need to address that for our efficacy and efficiency going forward. I did not sell this to you. I did not inform you. I did not make a business case, and I did not make a gap analysis, and all those points are spot on. And I failed on that miserably with you, and you're 100% correct. I will share with you, obviously, that part of this is I'm asking for your ongoing trust. And that I'm not a big fan, as you probably know, the word of transparency, because I believe that actions are either credible or they're not. And what this evidence of the last weekend has shown is that it's shown a great lack of credibility or dishonesty is what it has come across. What I want to share with you is I'm a resident just like you. My only ambition is to be a positive change agent in a very formidable way for the city along with this council. I don't expect everybody to agree with everything, but I hear you loud and clear on this process. This process was poor. The second thing that informed me on this process, on the urgency of it, was we have one of our colleagues who is medically not with us. And I intentionally don't comment on it because I want to protect him and his family. But I know this is a problem. The problem in the charter is there's so much ambiguity in it, there's not a solution. And I know that the politics in our city are going to get worse and worse and intensify unless we solve that issue. It was a paramount issue for me. And it was the issue that was probably most widely commented on in an adversely manner. My perspective on it is that it's very common to have, and by the way, the third part was to create a clear separation between an executive branch and a legislative branch, the council, with the council still having ultimate authority. If you look through it, the council always has the ultimate authority, even on the veto part, always. So I would suggest that taking that analysis is recognizing that the power, the ultimate authority underneath the charter changes that I submitted always ultimately ended up with the council. The second part was to create some clarity of day-to-day operations. City administrator wanted to turn into a city manager, still runs the day-to-day operations of the city, but ultimately, if there's a push come to shove issue and the city administrator doesn't do something, the people have to have the ability to do that. Therefore, a clear defining of roles of oversight. That was my thinking. There I could go on and on and on about this, but I wanted to let you know it's not nefarious. It's my perspective as citizen that you've elected as mayor that I thought it was good for our city because of two immediate issues to me that if we don't deal with them, they're going to be problematic for our city. That was my thinking, and you can disagree with it, and I understand that. I definitely hear you that the process was poor, the process was not communicated, but it was not underhand. It was not meant to get anything by you. It was a reality was this has got to happen quick. The state legislature's in for a very limited period of time. You're right. When I came in office on January the 1st, this was not a priority for me. And you know that our priorities are the 11 items on the 100-day action plan. Those are our priorities. For the very, very poor communication, it is completely on me. For the fact that this issue is before you as a people and before the city council, this issue is clearly on me. So let the blame fall on me and not on my fellow council, my colleagues on the council. I want to be clear on that. I don't want to take up too much of your time because it's Valentine's night. I do want to have committees so we can talk about it tomorrow. One of the things you probably heard is that we are changing to a people's calendar so people can be at meetings and not have meetings at 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. or 10 a.m. And I'm sorry it's Valentine's Day. It really wasn't a thought. We were in Greenville working our tails off. I can't wait to share with you the agenda. I can't wait to share with you how much work there was between the staff and the city council. I think in the amazing things that we got done working on for the city that are going to unfold in front of you at committee meetings and in council meetings in the future. With that being said, I'll hush and I will ask for comments from our city council members. Councilman Palermo.
Thank you, Mayor. And I really want to absolutely thank everybody that took the time to come here. If you spoke, thank you. I think definitely a lot of good points and important discussion. And even if you did not speak, thank you for being here and just really being, participating in local government, in democracy, in really just really how our, just government in general. And so, you know, around this topic, I did something, again, I heard a lot of, you know, great points, some that were probably clear already, some that were articulated really well in in kind of a different way that even gives additional perspective. Something I do want to call out is, at one point it was mentioned how the resolution has a place for signature at the bottom and a date, and it's my understanding that is always the case with all resolutions. So if there's one that doesn't have that, then I guess I'm wondering why that wouldn't, from a format standpoint. And certainly over the years we've seen many resolutions and whatnot that of course would have a signature, have a date, and either be deferred or denied. And so that's a part of the discussion and all that. And I think overall, as the mayor, you know, put his thoughts together, I definitely appreciate the perspective tonight. As I saw things, as you look for any of us that read through the draft of the proposed changes, I think there's a number of items that do potentially make sense and bring, frankly, more accountability to make sure that residents are empowered, and just the fact that staff are not accountable to citizens. They're not accountable to taxpayers. It is the elected officials that are accountable to taxpayers, and I do think we should certainly have a structure that reflects that. Something for any of you that read through the draft, as I'd mentioned in my post, one of the things was I'm confident that regarding the election aspect for an entire term, that's something I don't think anyone up here would be supporting. And another example I'll call out, I didn't bother bringing out the detail earlier today. One of the items for powers of mayor, it mentioned that a mayor could solely be the one to just decide and control an agenda. And some of the newer people, or some that don't follow the process as much, that might not seem like a big item. That would be a very big change, and a very impactful change, and one that I certainly would not support, because I think it's absolutely crucial and beneficial that we do look at opportunities to improve the charter, and at the same time, at all times, we make sure that we have checks and balances, because absolutely, I do believe there's a city council for a reason. That's why a city doesn't just have a mayor, just like a state doesn't just have a governor. And so I think checks and balances are absolutely crucial, and it's also why I think this is a valuable, healthy public discussion. And I'm glad we get to have it tonight. I'm glad we get to have it at committee. And then, of course, just as tomorrow is a public meeting, we can, of course, determine potential next steps and really talk through and walk through, figuring out what are the updates that absolutely bring great benefit to the city to change, and of course have a magnifying glass just really walking through each and every one of them. So I definitely appreciate the candid discussion, and just really look forward to having a continued discussion to see which, if any, changes should be made to improve our processes.
Any other council members like to make comments? Thank you, council. With that, we will move to the consent agenda. Do I get a motion to approve the consent agenda? Go ahead. Councilmember Hall?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve. Do I get a second?
Second.
Councilman Vanstrom has seconded.
Point of order.
Yes, sir.
Is it the opportunity for public comment, if anyone in the public has any comments on the consent agenda?
Thank you, Councilmember Palermo. Is there any public comment on any of the items on the consent agenda? The consent agenda is right here, Joe. Do you have any public comment? Okay. Any public comments on the consent agenda? With no further public comment, there is a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. All in favor, raise your hand. It is unanimous. The consent agenda is approved. Where are we at? Regular agenda? Regular agenda. Community Development Department Liaison Member, Councilmember Mike Palermo. Would you like to?
Thank you, Mayor Wilson. Item number 1, approval of the initiation of a text amendment to the Unified Development Code, UDC, regarding the RM2 residential multifamily and RM3 residential multifamily zoning districts. Ms. Dybel?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is the initiation of a proposed text amendment to the Unified Development Code to changes to section 13.4.3, who can submit an application. Letter D, changes to renumbering the section and also adding a second paragraph. The existing language that's currently in the Unified Development Code indicates that no amendment to the official map can be made and no applications to the official zoning map shall be accepted by the city to rezone into the future development map designations of suburban residential to from RS6, RS4, RCC, and RTH. The proposed changes would indicate adding a neighborhood residential, active neighborhoods, and also estate residential as indicated in the text amendment as new character areas. So instead of just saying suburban residential, the text amendment would indicate active neighborhood, neighborhood residential, and estate residential. And the reason for that is prior to last year in the fall when the 2040 comprehensive plan was adopted, the city only had 2 residential character areas, estate residential and suburban residential. When the 2040 comprehensive plan was adopted, neighborhood residential and active neighborhoods was added. So those 4 items would now be in this, 4 character areas would now also be in this text amendment. And then the second paragraph would indicate that no amendment to the official zoning map for the UDC shall be made and no applications to the zoning map amendments shall be accepted by the city involving a request to rezone to the following districts, which is RM2 and RM3, and these are our multifamily residential classifications. So what this is stating is that no one could bring in an application to rezone property in the city to the RM2 or RM3 categories. It is not taking away any zoning classifications that's already existing with those classifications. Do you have any questions for staff?
Councilmember Palermo.
Thank you, Mayor Wilson. Ms. Dybel, thank you for that discussion, and thank you for already clarifying the intent on why there was the change from suburban residential to mentioning the other ones. Basically, that whole area was suburban residential. We've changed the names, and so of course need to align that. But now I want to focus on the bigger piece right here, on really the intent behind it. So. Hopefully some of you had watched the committee meeting where this was already discussed, but I forgive me for those of you that have. I certainly want to repeat myself for those of you that would not have watched the committee meeting. Ultimately, the intent here is dealing with standalone apartments. So this is not looking at multifamily of all types of zoning. It's not looking at mixed use. It's purely looking at zonings where it's purely standalone multifamily. So that's what this is looking at. The intent on why is twofold. Number one is frankly, when it comes to redevelopment, when it comes to activating areas and creating destinations, the city of Alpharetta has actually done a great job with their zoning code, and they've done a great job at creating a number of destinations and walkable areas, et cetera. And with that, if you look at the city of Alpharetta's rules, which are all much stricter, the city of Alpharetta rules are much stricter than the city of Roswell rules when it comes to multifamily, mixed use, et cetera. And so this is something that is certainly not making us have identical rules, but get us a little closer in one area. Because again, there's so many things that I believe Roswell has that Alpharetta does not, and at the same time, from a creating mixed use and creating destinations, and how they've done some of that is certainly been more effective than what we've seen in Roswell approved, where it's been either more standalone apartments or more mixed use that is reality strong majority, just purely residential without the actual mix part of it. And so the intent here is the fact that we already have a lot of standalone apartments. In fact, on the east side of Roswell, there are more multifamily units than single-family homes and townhomes combined. And so this is looking at addressing that and wanting to really encourage the fact that we'd like to see more mixed use. We'd like to see a creation of destinations. And the one thing that was not discussed at committee that I'd like to discuss adding tonight is really around that intent, knowing the focus is on standalone apartments. There's one potential loophole that was realized that we want to make sure to address at the beginning. And just as I've mentioned, this is something that was discussed in detail at committee. Right now, tonight is the initiation. If this council supports initiating this tonight, then it would move to Planning Commission for public comment, and Planning Commission would give a recommendation on it. It would then come back to City Council for a first reading. If the City Council chooses to approve that first reading, it would then come back to a second reading. And then if the City Council chooses to approve that second reading, it would then be voted in to update the code. And again, of course, there's public comment on this tonight, public comment on this at Planning Commission, public comment on this at the first reading, public comment on the second reading if this council brings it that far. So knowing that the intent is to encourage more mixed use, more walkability, more just opportunities for live, work, play, instead of just so much focus on the pure high density residential on its own. RM2 and RM3 are certainly two major aspects of it. The one other is RX. So there's RX, which is residential mixed use, except the residential mixed use is 100% residential. And that's something that could be multifamily, could be townhomes, could be single-family homes. And basically knowing that the intent is to have more true mixed use, which involves a commercial or retail type aspects included, then what I'd like to see us add to this, and I'll certainly take staff's judgment on the best way to do it, on how it should be added in, but where multifamily is not a component of residential mixed use. So the RX would still be available. It would still be available in all the places it's available today. And then just basically that as today, townhomes, I believe, can be requested in it, as can small lot, single-family homes, that just the standalone apartments really, or multifamily units would be removed to that. And again, as a reminder, and something I want to stress is, if council does support this change, both the RM2 and RM3, as well as the RX change, multifamily is still an option for developers to request. This is not taking away the opportunity to request multifamily. What it's saying is for the developers that if you're going to request multifamily, for it to be part of a walkable mixed-use area. And so that's the intent, and certainly would love to continue this discussion. But Ms. Dybel, what's your response or any reaction to the RX aspect in the standalone apartments?
Okay, so your comment and state is to add the RX where someone could not request a rezoning to it. If it's for the apartments only?
So basically, the goal would be, and I'm not sure if it should be in section 13.4.3, or if you feel in other places where it would be best, but ultimately for RX to not include multifamily as an option, because there's no option for commercial or retail within RX.
Okay, so you're indicating, because currently the code indicates multifamily as a conditional use in RX. So you're basically indicating to remove the conditional use altogether from that and still allow the single family component and the townhouse component.
Correct.
Okay.
And Mr. Davidson, any reactions or questions around that?
No, that's clear. That's fine.
And so, thank you. So those are all my comments on just basically the intent here to remove standalone multifamily units when knowing there are many different zoning types throughout the city that still have multifamily units as an option and a request.
Thank you, Jackie. So, Councilmember Palermo, would you like to make a, by the way, is there any public comment on Councilmember Palermo's perspective here?
Hello, it's me again.
Welcome.
No surprise. Sarah Beeson again. To reiterate, resident, homeowner, run a small family business here for 20 years. But some added things that I didn't mention before. I also have an MBA from the University of Georgia, a Master's of Science in Environmental Management from the University of Maryland, and I'm currently pursuing my PhD in the University of Georgia in Environmental Design and Planning with a specific focus in urban design and planning. So, city planning. So one of my biggest concerns, and I voiced this concern probably ad nauseum to Mayor Wilson and also to Councilman Palermo, so this is no shock to either, is the fact that we're in dire need of housing right now across the board of the metro Atlanta area. We're 90,000 units shy of where we need to be at. For those of you with a finance background on council, I know we have several between Mayor Wilson, Councilman Palermo, and also Councilman Moreland. When you increase demand but you don't increase supply, that makes pricing go up. And in the last 4 months, prices for rent have gone through the roof. That's not only an issue in terms of our single-family housing, but multifamily specifically as well. For us to have a true community, and I mean that diversified across all socioeconomic stratus, I mean that in terms of affordability for anybody, say you're working a blue-collar job, but I also mean that in terms of somebody who's just starting out. You don't come out of college being able to afford a home, certainly not here in Roswell. I know when I originally graduated from college, I couldn't move back here. I know that's the case for many as well. But it also prevents folks from aging in place. The size of the homes here in Roswell especially. It's a lot of upkeep for a house, and being able to have multifamily communities allow people to age in place, allow people to rent homes, and it allows people throughout all levels of our community to be able to live here in Roswell. I also oversee employment for our firm, so we have about 50 people, and that's entry level all the way up through engineers, and that's something that we're going to continue to struggle here with Roswell, not just with my firm, but companies throughout, is a labor force because we don't have workforce housing. Apartments allow for that. I realize that this is not necessarily it's not taking away the ability to have it. It's really just taking away, you cannot rezone it. But council can still deny the request. So if you don't take away the RM2 and the RM3, people would still be able to put their applications in. Council would still be able to look at this on a case-by-case basis based off where it is. And I say that because walkability is not necessarily true for a sweeping multifamily community. If we have an area that's already overwhelmingly commercial, you can have multifamily infill to make that area more walkable, to make it live, work, and play, because you're adding residential to a commercial area. And I realize the goal is to be more like Alpharetta would live, work, and play, but that assumes with these developments that you're going to live, work, and play inside that development, depending on where it's going to be at. I'm going to take Vickers as an example. If you were to take that development and put along some of these routes where we currently have RM2 and RM3, depending on how this planning commission goes, or planning meeting goes tomorrow to discuss the comprehensive plan, you're not going to be able to live, work, and play there unless you can afford a $2,500 rent for that specific unit, and then you work at a coffee shop that's on the bottom. That's not live, work, and play. But, however, if you were to, say, work at Kimberly-Clark across the street, you could still have an apartment at a new development because you're a professional within that realm. I just would like to emphasize the fact that if we're going to limit housing at any format, especially multifamily, it's going to make prices considerably go up, and they're going to continue to increase over time. Also, it's not an if you build it, they will come scenario. Just because we're going to limit these zoning codes, it doesn't mean developers are like, awesome, let's go do some commercial development, even though it's down across the board. I'll use Vickers as another example because my office is across the street from it. I know that residential was filled for Vickers for a long time before any of the retail units were filled. And so when we have these multi-use requirements for any of our multifamily housing, not only are developers are going to back out, it's not going to incentivize that multifamily housing, it's not going to necessarily incentivize multi-use either, because right now retail is down, but office especially is down, because people are starting to go remote a little more and rework how they're approaching that work environment. And again, I say that because I oversee operations in that sort of environment. So I would just like council to take that into consideration when looking at the long-term plan for our city, especially considering we have 95,000 residents. So appreciate it. Thanks for your consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Beeson. Welcome, Joe.
Thanks, Mayor Wilson. I'm Joe Piontek. I live at 4304 Forest Walk. I'm going to direct my question to you, but I'm really asking it of Jackie. How many parcels are there on the map that qualify right now as RM2 or RM3?
Joe, do you know the answer?
No, Jackie does, though.
Oh, no, I'm just curious. I
Jackie
didn't know if it was rhetorical or not.
Right off the top of her head.
Well, she's counting. I can see in her head.
Right, you see? That's how well she knows this.
Give me a minute.
It doesn't have to be exact, Jackie. It's
Not going to
it's
be
a low
exact. It is a loaded question. Some of those we annexed in from Fulton County, so I'm trying to remember where we put everything. You said parcels, so maybe, remember, some of them are larger.
Right.
15 to 20?
15 to 20.
Let's
So,
go with.
and I'm glad you're done beating about the bush for the, to bring your pledge of no apartments into the Unified Development Code. If something was a commercial zone or light industrial, could it be rezoned in the current code? Could it be rezoned as RM2 or RM3? Or RX?
So under the current code, yes. Someone could bring forward an application right now and request for RM2 or RM3. However, you cannot request stack flat building type right now. So you can request it, but you couldn't do a stack flat or a building type.
You couldn't build anything on it, right?
Correct.
Okay, so in other words, the way the Unified Development Code has been changed to this point is that you can request it in a commercial to go down to an RM2. That's a down zoning. Is it legal to take away someone's down zoning rights, or is that an unlawful taking? I'm asking the attorney.
So depending on the comp plan, there's various things in motion, obviously, but somebody does not have a right to a certain zoning, so it would be fine to prohibit the request.
Okay, so there's no problem with, it's not an unlawful taking to prohibit a down zoning in a parcel?
Correct.
Okay, so the answer to this is, this takes away, this removes any doubt as to the point of that no apartments sign that was being waved about by a certain council member. This will create a no apartments, but it was already in the code that there are no apartments allowed, because if you were to down zone a CX or anything down into an RM2, you still couldn't build on it because you've taken away those building types. So this has been done, and finally this will be done once and for all. And I'm just going to reiterate something that a previous council member who's no longer on the council said. The entire Unified Development Code needs to be rewritten. Chewing it up like this bit by bit and bite by bite. Just go ahead and redo the Unified Development Code. That's my suggestion, Mayor Wilson.
Joe, thank you. I don't think you'll find anybody on the council that disagrees with you.
I don't think so either.
It's kind of like the charter discussion. It is a big piece, and that's kind of like we took a little section of the charter piece, and you can see how it kind of blew up on me, but it's my fault. And we've talked about the UDC, And that's the problem. It is a gigantic piece to attack and address. And so we have picked our battles with the agenda that you're familiar with. But we agree with you, I will tell you, on the UDC piece.
Can I make one comment? I do need to clarify my answer on the building types, because that was in the commercial classifications. Currently under RX, the building type for walk-up flat and stack flat is allowed, as is, let me go to the RM2 and RM3. Give me a second. So under the code right now, the building type is allowed under RM2 and RM3. So it was taken out of the commercial mixed use and the other commercial classifications. But under the current RM2, RM3, and RX, the building type is still currently allowed.
Are there any other comments, public comments? Yes, ma'am, sorry.
Hi, my name's Daryl O'Hare. I've been a Roswell resident in March. I'll be here 24 years. I'm born and raised in Atlanta and a lifetime Georgian. I just come because I have a little bit of concern about, I know I think I'm sort of in that R6 or R9 category, so it's just sort of a small suburban. I live at 1130 Arbor Creek Drive in Roswell, and I'm at a particular area where there are, when you are, it's near North Fulton Hospital, and right around there you do have apartments, commercial townhomes. There's a limited stay location just up the street from me. I'm near Hembry Springs. There's also some other plots. And I remember that if we didn't have this ability back when the Habitat for Humanity's facility was built, because we had to rezone it to one of these two in order for them to build it, that would not have been available. And there is still, not necessarily a historic district, not somewhere else where it's really that walkable, but it has access to the buses. It would concern me if there was a turn down flat no at a possibility of what Ms. Beeson was talking about. For me, it is a concern that if we do want people to work in our schools, and I am an educator, but not in the public schools, you need to be able to have housing that is for a workforce. Your local policemen and women and educators and everybody else will be priced out if our blanket answer is no to that. I understand the desire and the fun that comes with sort of this mixed use type thing, which years and years ago, Roswell was so against. Now they're for it. But I'm for more walkability, more use, but more access. I want everybody to be able to live here and enjoy and not have to commute so far in just to work here. It would be nice, but my feeling, and I don't have a full understanding of it, and I can say that, is that it does prevent, I don't know why it can't still come before the council, and then if you don't think it would be a good fit, then say no. But if you say no up front, you might be turning down something that's an opportunity for the city and an asset to the city than something else. So that's my concern. Thank you.
Those are wonderful comments. Thank you. Any other public comments? Yes, sir, Ms. Yao.
I don't oppose apartments per se. What I do oppose is single-use, high-density residential zoning. You end up with a dead zone that has a single use that does not encourage walkability. It does not encourage anything other than an opportunity for large real estate developers to make a lot of money, because that is where the demand is right now. But where the demand is right now is not necessarily good for long-term planning for the fabric of our city. I love mixed use. It's a shame that mixed use is a lot of difficulty here. The project at Sun Valley, the Catherine, that Jeff Fuqua did, that failed to deliver the mixed-use component is really ironic, because if there's anybody in the Atlanta metropolitan area that knows how to deliver a mixed-use product, it's Jeff Fuqua. He's a master of it. And if you can't get him to deliver a mixed-use product, you have a failed zoning code. Absolutely failed. Joe and I aren't going to agree on much, but we agree that the UDC is just a failed document. It was cut and paste from the get-go. If you were in the suburbs of say, Dallas, where the land is flat, the parcels are large, and they're all rectangular in nature, probably not a bad zoning code. But when the reality is that your topography is challenged, your lots that are left are odd-sized, and it's all infill, it's a terrible plan. It's a zoning code that is closing the barn door after the horses gotten out. But mixed use done right, it is dynamic. It creates an interesting and exciting place to live, to be. In where I come from a very high density environment. But even the high-end apartment buildings all have mixed use on the ground floor. They have doctor's offices. You know what doesn't have mixed use in my hometown? Public housing. It's a cautionary tale. Mixed use doesn't preclude apartments. It doesn't preclude a mix of housing. But anyone who thinks that that is going to be a panacea for affordable housing is kidding themselves. The land here is just too expensive. I'm stunned when I drive up to Forsyth how many multifamily developments there are. Stunned. I can't imagine, but that's where the land is cheap. I wouldn't live in a multifamily place that far away, but that's just me. But it's what passes for affordable these days. It's not going to happen here in Roswell without massive subsidies. Just the way it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Niel. Very insightful, sir. Any other public comment? Yes, ma'am. And will you say your name? I'm sorry, I know you said it last time and I forgot it, so I apologize.
All right, Laura Jones. I filled out my yellow card previously. It's over there.
Thanks, Laura.
And I live over in the Mill Village area. Where's my point? So I would echo this lady's point over here, was that saying no to it up front is taking it off the table. If someone is allowed to apply for it, there's no reason you can't say no if it's in a bad spot. And so I would disagree with taking it off the table completely. The walkability, I think you could make somewhere that's walkable, that is possible, not having commercial. I can visualize that. There's a lot of places that have been created that are not walkable. There's no way to walk through Vickers. When I think of walkable, I think of large, wide sidewalks. That's not what I'm seeing. I see circuitous routes and things like that. So when I see this, taking that off the table, I don't see it fixing the problem. I think you're just making different problems. And I am concerned about diversity. I'm concerned about making it livable here. I have 2 degrees from Georgia Tech. I make plenty of money, and I still had a hard time getting back to the town that I grew up in. I grew up here, and getting back in was very difficult. And that's not where I want everybody to be. I think we should have a mixed community and have people who can work here and live here. If we're really going for live, work, play, then we need to have people who work here be able to live here as well. And if we take this completely off the table, then we're not making that possible.
Thank you, Laura. Other public comments?
Again, my name is Lisa Stamey, and I live in Martin's Landing. So Martin's Landing is the is the subdivision that started in North Fulton of mixed use, right? We have a school in our neighborhood. We're also, instead of fields where our kids play, we're also supposed to have a post office and a coffee shop and a bunch of other things that never got developed, right? So you guys can design whatever you want. You can have developers. We've already seen Target in the last 20 years since I've moved to Roswell. You can say and do whatever you want. But you guys need to literally think, how do we keep all of our residents loving to live in Roswell from when they're little kids to when they're old? And I can tell you, even though our neighborhood does not have all that mixed use, we have families that continue to come back and live in Martin's Landing for the sheer fact of they have every size house that they could possibly want inside of that neighborhood, and they feel like community. I grew up in South Georgia. I grew up where I walked downtown and I went to the library and I went to we can't do any of that here in Roswell. It's not possible. You can't be a kid and live on Canton Street and go anywhere on the sidewalks that you have. So even though Canton Street is walkable, it's still not mixed use because it only goes for people who are 35, 45, 50 and older. There's nothing for children to do inside of that mixed use. So you guys need, as you redo all of your codes and do all your things, like, are we making sidewalks wide enough that people can get here? Are we making bike trails wide enough that non-Peloton people who can go 35 miles an hour on their bicycles, can they use their bike to get there? You guys have lots of opportunities. You have lots of different funding that comes available. Use those opportunities to think every single time, how can we help every single resident of Roswell? Not just the one who's, my age and, has a kid who's still in school and not planning to retire. I'm not planning to retire in the next, 10 years. Everyone. You guys need to be looking at every single person and every single thing that you do and asking the questions. And maybe it looks different than Alpharetta. Maybe it looks different than Milton. Maybe it looks different than in town. That's okay. Be unique. Who cares? Just think about everyone, not just the ones who you think have the money at the moment to purchase a certain thing. Because at some point, that little kid is going to remember that they loved Roswell and they want to come back. But if they don't make enough money, they can't ever come back. That's all my point. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Yes, ma'am. Ms. Russell.
Janet Russell, and I live in the original mixed use. I live behind Thousand Hills Coffee. My house at the corner was built in 1850, and across the street is a house built this past summer, which sold for $1.2 million. The rest of the houses on my street were built in the 60s. There's a couple built in the 30s. There's a church at the corner. I addressed this at the open mic night for those who weren't there, and I discussed walkability. From the river to the historic square is 1.2 miles, and we do not have a connecting sidewalk on either side to get us to the square or the river. I did a quick count, not official. There are over 1,000 residences, not humans, but residences, between the river and the square. They are apartments, they are Habitat for Humanity houses, they are $900,000 townhomes, they are canopy, they are Riverwalk condominiums, they are single-family homes. Behind me is Connemara estate homes that overlook the river. We are the original mixed use. I also did a quick survey, and from the river to Holcomb Bridge Road, there are over 200 independent, family-owned or individually owned businesses. They are not big box. We are the original mixed use. Why? Because this is the old Cherokee Indian Trail, and when the white man came here, he took advantage of the existing trail, and they built little homes. That's why when you drive down 9, you'll see some concrete stairs that lead to nothing. That was the stairs that led to a house that was built there. So what I would suggest to you is consider the people that already live here. We have multimillionaires and we have people who aren't thriving at all. We have the Roswell Housing Authority in our neighborhood. We also have the municipal complex. We have historic homes. We have historic churches and teaching museums. And yet I cannot walk safely. As you know, I didn't have my car for 3 weeks, so I got to know this area really well. And I walked from my house to Woodstock Road to go out for lunch. I got to walk in right-hand turn lanes because the sidewalk abruptly ends in front of the strip center where Sugo's used to be. I cannot turn right out of my street and walk to Amalfi Restaurant because there is none. There has been a total disregard for MARTA bus stops, and I brought this up before and I'll bring it again. RDOT removed MARTA bus stops and never replaced them. It was flipping the bird to the people that use public transportation. We know how important it is because for 1 year, the 85 bus was suspended because of the pandemic. 3 nursing homes are also in my mixed-use district. 3 nursing homes. Those employees could not get to work. If you want young people to not have to get in the car and drive, then they have to have walkability or good public transportation. I take the bus. Why wouldn't I? It's not making a special trip for me. I just hop on when it goes by. This city needs to make a commitment to the people that already live in mixed use so that they can come back here. I have said forever, people love downtown Alpharetta and think it's fantastic. Well, they took 2 old beat-up car repair shops, tore them down, and built the city center. There was nothing there to begin with except a flower shop and maybe one other thing. But no one is going to say they grew up in Avalon. No one. But I meet people on airplanes who say, oh, you live in Roswell? I grew up in Roswell. You know, I'm passionate about the whole thing. Somebody asked me, why did you move here? Well, I had 2 requirements for my husband. I needed to live in a town that had a high school with its name on it, and I needed to live on the bus route. I took the bus all over the Bay Area. My dad was a bus driver. And why did I need a high school with its name on it? Because it gave us a sense of continuity and community. I chose, when I moved here, I could live in a city or within a community, and that is the operative. I chose within the community. And for me, I am so lucky and so blessed because I never leave my house that somebody doesn't say hi or a little kid give me a hug or the mailman waves to me. Why? Because I chose the road less traveled even without the sidewalk, and it made all the difference.
Ms. Russell, I've had the opportunity to listen to you in person and in these halls before many, many times, and you've imparted a lot of wisdom to us. That was an excellent speech. That was well done. I have to tell you, that may have been the best 5 minutes I've ever heard from you. Let's keep it at 5. Yes, ma'am. Ms. Brumlow. Ms. Brumlow, before you say one word, I just want to apologize. So this issue is a great example for me as a resident who learned a lot of this stuff over the last year and a half, where sometimes issues get conflated, and there's a lot more to, like, the issue is really about a specific zoning piece, and then it becomes a much larger issue, whereas I think we're really talking about one very specific thing. But sorry, Ms. Brumlow, to take your time. I apologize.
No, it's fine, and you're right. And actually, I wasn't planning on speaking on this, but Lisa is my neighbor. We live actually on the same street, and so I just wanted to make sure that you also know that, you know, it's not just her. You know, it's more people like us. When I moved, I was born in Mexico. I moved here in 1995. My husband was from the area, so we rented an apartment here in Roswell because his parents lived here. And then when we got good jobs, you know, we moved to Martin's Landing to one of the tiny, tiny little homes, because like she said, they have townhomes, they have condos, they have apartments, they have tiny homes, and they have multi-million ones. So that's what we could afford, and it was great. And then we had 2 kids and better jobs, and we were able to move to a bigger house, you know, so that's where we are right now. And hopefully one day we'll downsize again, stay in the same place. So that's one example that I would like everybody to have the opportunity to have. Right now, if you ask me, I wouldn't recommend anybody to move to Martins Landing because it's so expensive. Like, I couldn't even afford it right now. The house prices, it's ridiculous. Every time I say I'm from Martins Landing, people look at me like, oh, you must be rich. I'm like, no, I just lucked out like 20 years ago, you know? My son wouldn't able to afford that little house that we had, or the apartment, even the apartment. So one example, I was in the bar the other day, and one of my friends came over. She is a medical technician, so it's like, you know, it's like a really good job. She's getting priced out of the Roswell Village apartments. They're raising up her rent by 20%, and she doesn't really want to move because she likes the area, but she also can't afford it anymore. It's just like, it's just the supply and demand. You know, Roswell doesn't have enough demand for everybody who doesn't have a high income to stay. You were talking in a previous meetings about the improvements you want to do to the police and fire department forces. Again, if you think about what their salaries are, they're not really going to be able to easily afford something here in the area. And I would love to have like my neighbor to be the firefighter, and then the other side, the police person, you know. And if you really look at it, I mean, like objectively, they're not going to be able to afford that. And this is why they don't live here right now. They live somewhere else and they come to work here. So just, you know, and I am not by any means an expert on any zoning and stuff. This is so new to me. I'm from IT, so give me code. So just remember that, you know, remember like, oh, yeah, you're right, where are these people going to work? Where are they going to go buy lunch? You know, it's like one thing, yeah, are they going to go to Stony House all the time? Probably not. They probably need like, you know, McDonald's. So let's vary it. Maybe we can become like the Austin of, you know, like the weird people where everybody can live together or something. Anyway, sorry, I'm ranting. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Brumlow. Any other public comments? Council comments. Councilmember Palermo.
Thank you, Mayor Wilson. And again, I definitely appreciate all the public comment. I think a lot of points that I'd like to discuss, but all I thought good discussions. So a question I heard from two speakers brought up the fact that it's a conditional use. It could still be denied, so therefore don't take it off the table. And that's where I think really the city of Roswell could be more productive and do a better job if we do provide clarity both to Roswell residents as well as to developers. And that's something that frankly Alpharetta does a really good job of, because they make it very clear. Here's exactly what we want. Here's exactly our code, and basically they're not going to change it off that. And then developers know exactly what to expect as well, which ultimately, as a developer, it takes a lot of money, it takes a lot of time to put together potential plans, only to be unsure if they're going to be accepted or denied. And so that's where I think we owe it to our residents as well as the developers to show really what to expect. And again, what I've mentioned before is the fact that mixed use is going to create more opportunity for more walkability. And in an area, you know, as an example, is the densest part of Roswell is actually an area that I believe is the least walkable. And of course, there's obviously the clear issue that there's not enough sidewalks and some design type aspects, but it's also you have to walk very far before you reach any other use besides just residential. And whereas there's a lot of benefits to having areas where it can be a very short walk to lots of different uses. It's more of an active walk and different aspects. So that's one aspect that I wanted to bring up. Also, we talked about walkability in general, and just the focus of places for people to ride a bicycle, walk, et cetera. And through T++ 2, we do have actually multi-use trails coming to Old Alabama, coming to Riverside. A lot of different things going on from that standpoint. But another thing that was brought up was around the challenge with, well, you could have mixed use and still the apartments will fill much faster than the commercial aspect, a very legitimate concern. We have a real example where it occurred with Vickers. And again, that goes back to actually weaknesses within the zoning code and some things that have been addressed more recently to get more in line with Alpharetta. So again, Alpharetta, when they have a mixed use, they are going to, in general, when they're having multifamily, they're having lower density than in Roswell. It gives them the opportunity to spread it out and split with mixed uses. And therefore, there's also, that's what has encouraged in parts of, say, downtown Alpharetta, where because it can't all be multifamily, because it can't be nearly the density that Vickers had, which is still much lower density than we're going to see coming on Hill Street. When there's just such a focus where, even though technically it's mixed use, but it's really the giant focus on residential, results in that's all the developer needs to worry about. They don't really have skin in the game for what's else. Whereas in Alpharetta, that's where they had the need and the clear incentive to actually build office, get daytime crowd supporting things, so you can have that live, work, play. And we did talk about rents. Again, want to stress that, number one, especially if we're looking at the east side of Roswell, the fact that today there are more multifamily units than single family and townhomes combined, and that doesn't even include the many hundreds of multifamily units that have been approved in the last 2 years or so. So it's not that we're all single family or anything like that. It's actually the fact that we need to make sure we are looking at what the right balance is. And as I heard about rents as well, an article from just a few months ago in the Herald, because actually I heard a speaker mention Forsyth and even the fact that they're building a number of apartments up in Forsyth. So the Herald had a story where it took the average apartment costs, and as brought up, certainly when you have average, that means you can have very high and very low, but nonetheless, there's obviously a range. It looked at Alpharetta, Johns Creek, Roswell, Cumming, Sandy Springs, and Dunwoody, and it showed that at that month, according to Rent Cafe, that Roswell had the lowest apartment rents of all 6 of those cities. And again, that's a separate point, but I think it goes back to the mayor's point, which is, I think we're talking about some different things here, which is just purely standalone apartments, not apartments in general, just purely standalone apartments. We already have a lot of them, and as we be clear to developers in the future and to residents, we want to show our goal is when there's the multifamily, we're looking for mixed use, and we're looking for opportunities for more walkability. So those were all my statements on based on the feedback. But again, I really do appreciate all the public discussion, and again, this is the first of multiple meetings to get to discuss this.
Thank you, Councilmember Palermo. Other council members, comments? Councilmember Venstrom.
Yeah, one statement I'd like to make is that revitalization of existing standalone apartments is something that's a big goal of mine in this city. And one of the ways that we can lead to that is this type of language in our UDC, because we need to encourage that. We have, as we've discussed, a very high number already of apartments in Roswell, over 35%. Economically, it's not feasible for us to continue on that course without mixed use. And on top of that, we have blighted areas of standalone cottage-style apartments, many, not cottage-style, what is the name? Garden-style. Garden-style, 15 years down the road become issues 20 years down the road, and we have a number of those, and I'd like to see that addressed first and foremost before we're building new ones.
Thank you, Councilmember Vanstrom. Council, any other comments? I believe there is a motion. Forgive me, do I have a motion on the regular agenda on item number 1?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to make a motion.
Yes, sir, please make the motion.
On item number 1, I motion to approve the initiation of a text amendment to the Unified Development Code regarding the RM2 and RM3 zoning districts as written by staff, as presented by Ms. Dybel, with the addition of that RX would have the standalone, I'll ask staff to go ahead and just add the exact language to accomplish the goal of no multifamily and new RX requests.
Just to be clear, it's the item agenda as written, adding RX zoning, correct?
And adding specifically just removing multifamily as an option within RX going forward.
Got it. Thank you, Councilmember Palermo. All right, the motion is made by Councilmember Palermo. Do I have a second?
Second.
Councilmember Northland makes a second. All in favor, raise your hands, please. The vote is unanimous. The motion passes. One comment that I failed to make earlier is to announce that Councilmember Marcelo Zapata has an ongoing leave of absence and is excused. With that being said, we go to the city attorney's report, and which is a recommendation for closure to discuss personal litigation and real estate matters. With that being said, oh, by the way, before I leave, Mr. Knighton, personal privilege, would you like to say anything this evening?
No, Mayor, I'm fine, thank you.
Thank you, sir. With that being said, this council meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Oh, sorry. Beg your pardon. I need a motion to go to closure. So move. Well, I get one motion. Seconded? Seconded. All in favor, say aye. Motion's approved. Go to closure. Thank you.